So, this was a scenario that was requested to me on my Discord server a while ago. Anyway, the change needed for this scenario to happen is a simple one. The 24th World Martial Arts Tournament, which is where Hercule became the champion, happened 5 days before Cell appeared. The change in this scenario could easily be something like Cell somehow learning about the recent World Martial Arts Tournament and deciding to make his Cell games based off how it was structured. Regardless of how he finds out about it, when he broke into the news station and announces the Cell games, he mentions that his tournament will have a bracket with the lots being randomly drawn. As usual, though, he mentions that as many people can join the tournament as they want. Since the tournament is a bracket this time, however, some will have to fight the other humans instead of just going to fight Cell. People can also lose the fights by being thrown out of the ring, by surrendering, or by dying. However, because of the bracket style of the Cell games in this timeline, he could potentially be in less fights than he'd like to be. So, as a condition to the rules allowing for rings out and surrendering, he says these rules won't apply to the matches against himself. That way, his fights can last as long as he wants them to, so they're basically going to be to the death. After that, he still blasts a hole in the wall of the news station and leaves. The 9 days up until the Cell games go the same as usual, so there isn't a reason to go into detail about them. Besides Cell himself, the first people that shown up at the Cell games weren't competitors, but Jimmy Firecracker and his cameraman, as they hid and waiting on a nearby hill. Around 20 minutes before the Cell games were set to begin, Hercule arrived and briefly raised his fist to the camera, knowing the whole world was watching him. Normally, he would step up to the ring right away, but since they haven't drawn lots, that doesn't happen here. He does still wave Jimmy Firecracker to come down to him, as he then does a brief interview with him before mocking Cell. Regardless, Vegeta then shows up, followed by Android 16. Then he's followed up by the rest of the heroes arriving. Before the tournament begins, Krillin goes and talks to 16 about him being repaired. Goku still tries talking to 16, but he tells Goku to remember that he was created to kill him, since they must draw lots for the tournament this time. Hercule doesn't end up doing his boisterous interruption by declaring he'll go first. Briefly off topic, to have more people and fights in this tournament, I decided to include a scene in two fighters that were only present in the anime. Before they go to draw lots, Hercule's manager, Miss Pisa, comes flying in on her helicopter, along with Hercule's students, Kuroni and Perovsky, since they are joining the tournament too. Though they both still show off, with Kuroni slicing a bouquet of roses into pieces and Perovsky balling up his mask and eating it. After a brief, and awkward, moment of silence caused by that debacle, Cell announces that they are now going to draw lots. So, when I was coming up with the bracket for this tournament, I tried to do two things. First off, I tried to keep any fights that happened in the original Cell games present in this timeline, like Goku vs. Cell, for example. Secondly, I tried to make the rest of the fights based on what I think would be interesting fights to see. As for the fights that were in the original Cell games, there weren't many. Just Hercule vs. Cell, Goku vs. Cell, Android 16 vs. Cell, and Gohan vs. Cell. Technically, Kuroni and Perovsky both tried fighting Cell, but since there were only 13 fighters in this tournament, there's only 4 rounds in the tournament. This means that there aren't enough rounds to include all 6 of the fights Cell was normally involved in, so it made sense just to drop his fights with Kuroni and Perovsky. Also, as a brief note before continuing this scenario, even if it isn't the most realistic, I kept some scenes from the original story in this one. I try to make these scenarios how I think Toriyama would have done them if he decided to do the story this way, so that's why I kept certain aspects of the original story in this one, as you'll see later in the video. I can't say for certain, but it'll probably be easy to tell which aspects of the original story I decided to keep in there. Since there are 13 fighters participating in the tournament, some of them had to sit out the first round, and the fighters I chose to sit out this round were Gohan, Vegeta, and Android 16. I'll put up a picture of the bracket I drew for this tournament, but anyway, the fights I came up with for the first round are as follows. Match 1 is Future Trunks vs. Perovsky, Match 2 is Tien vs. Yamcha, Match 3 is Kuroni vs. Piccolo, Match 4 is Goku vs. Krillin, and Match 5 is Cell vs. Hercule. For the first match of Future Trunks vs. Perovsky, Hercule's student would obviously stand no chance against the future warrior, so he is easily knocked out of the ring. Like in the original, Hercule would probably make excuses for Perovsky's defeat, such as the ring being rigged or that Trunks coated himself with jalapeno pepper juice, as Perovsky is allergic to it. Regardless, Trunks would exit the ring after this, so that the second match can begin. The second match is between Tien and Yamcha, so this could be seen as a rematch from their fight in the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament. While it would be a friendly match between the two of them, Tien is still above Yamcha in power, so he would eventually end this match by knocking Yamcha out of the ring. We then get to the third match, which is Kuroni vs. Piccolo. Since Piccolo is more serious, he doesn't allow Kuroni to put on any of his over-the-top displays like what he did with the bouquet earlier. He just enters the ring and quickly knocks Kuroni out of the ring, thus winning the match. After Piccolo exits the ring, Hercule chimes in and says that he considered Kuroni to be the son he never had, but he never measured up to his father. Regardless, this brings us to the fourth match, which is between Goku and Krillin. This is yet another very friendly match, as these two are best friends with each other. The sense this is still at a time where Goku is only staying in his Super Saiyan form, Krillin would have a tough fight ahead of him. Goku would probably suppress himself, but there's still no way that Krillin can win it, so he is eventually knocked out of the ring. Finally, this brings us to the 5th and last match of the first round, which is between Cell and Hercule. Hercule still starts them off by taking his cape and belt off before entering the ring. He still does his show of chopping 14 tiles, but he then turns his attention towards Cell. When he tries to attack the bug monster, his attacks do nothing to him, but this is where things change. Since Cell put the limitation on himself that his matches can't end with forfeit or a ring out, he can't just knock Hercule out of the ring. This isn't good for Hercule by any means, so he would easily be killed by Cell. With this being aired on the live TV, the world would be in a dark state after seeing the World Martial Arts Champion having been killed, so they thought he was their best hope. I also can't even begin to imagine how his daughter, Videl, would have reacted to just seeing her father's death on live TV. Back at the Cell Games arena, this might cause a more serious mood to settle over some of the heroes like Goku, since even if Hercule was in over his head, he doesn't agree with Cell killing him. Regardless, this brings us to the second round of the Cell Games, where the matches are as follows. Match 6 is Gohan vs Future Trunks, Match 7 is Tien vs Piccolo, Match 8 is Vegeta vs Goku, and Match 9 is Android 16 vs Cell. For the 6th match, which is between Gohan and Future Trunks, I think this could be a cool tie-in / reference to Future Gohan being Future Trunks' mentor. It might even lead to an emotional moment for Trunks while they fight each other, so throughout their fight, there could be more information given about Future Gohan to this timeline's Gohan. Regardless, Gohan would be above Trunks in power during this fight, since he has mastered Super Saiyan and Trunks hasn't, so eventually, Gohan would knock Trunks out of the ring. The second match of round 2 is in the 7th match, which is between Tien and Piccolo. While we have never seen these two fight each other, it could have some interesting callbacks to previous sagas. One potential callback could be to how Tien tried to fight King Piccolo. The other callback could be how both Tien and Piccolo were major enemies at one point in the World Martial Arts Tournament. Anyway, Piccolo is far above Tien in power, so he doesn't have a chance in this fight. He would try his best, though, but he is eventually eliminated. The 8th match of the tournament is going to be a long fight, since it is between Vegeta and Goku. Since Goku is using his mastered Super Saiyan form from the start, Vegeta would likely go into his Super Saiyan form from the start. Even that is behind Goku in power, so he tries to use his Ascended Super Saiyan form. This would close the gap in power a little bit, but not enough to matter. Their fight would go on for a while, but Goku eventually wins by knocking Vegeta out of the ring. Goku would likely need to eat another Senzu Bean after this, since the fight with Vegeta would have worn him out. The final match of the second round, and the 9th match overall, is between Android 16 and Cell. Number 16 stands no chance against Cell, as he is leagues below him in terms of power. Cell would be easily knocking him around, as 16 couldn't really land any hits on him. At one point, when he has 16 knocked on the ground, he goes to finish him off. 16 would use this chance to follow through with his plan, so he quickly gets up and grabs Cell from behind. As usual, he tries to self-destruct and take Cell out alongside himself. However, it fails, and this is when Krillin explains to him about how Dr. Briefs removed the bomb from him. Cell still blasts 16 to pieces and kicks his head away, not bothering to crush it. This time, though, 16's head lands near the heroes watching the fight. Seeing this happen would still upset Gohan, since he believed the peaceful being such as 16 didn't deserve that fate. Anyway, with their fight over, this brings us to the 3rd round of the tournament, with the fights being as follows. Match 10 is Gohan vs Piccolo, and match 11 is Goku vs Cell. For the 10th match, it could be an interesting fight to see, since it is a fight between mentor and student, as it is Gohan vs Piccolo. Of course, Piccolo wouldn't be near Gohan in power, but I could see the young fighter suppressing himself to take on Piccolo. However, Piccolo forfeits this fight like how he forfeited in the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament against Shin. After all, if Goku loses the next fight against Cell, Gohan would have to fight Cell, so Piccolo would know Gohan has to sustain his energy just in case. This brings us to the 11th overall match, which is the final match of the 3rd round, and it is between Goku and Cell. Their fight likely goes the same, though with Cell having killed people before this fight, Goku likely starts going all out from the beginning, so the little warm-up we saw in the original timeline doesn't happen. Goku just tries his best from the very start. Normally during this fight is where Cell destroys the arena, but since he removed the limitation of being knocked out of the ring during fights he's involved in, he doesn't have to destroy the arena, so it remains intact. The fight goes the same as usual up to the moment that Goku started to get tired and would normally forfeit. With Cell having not allowed forfeiting in the match against him, Goku is stuck fighting him to the death. So, he would have no choice but to continue his fight against Cell, even though he knows his efforts will be fruitless. With him using up so much energy, eventually he would drop back into his base form. Normally, Trunks would try to have Krillin throw Goku a Senzu Bean, but Vegeta stopped him in the original timeline. I think in a case where it's literally about to be the death of Goku, Trunks would stand up to his father and throw Goku the Senzu Bean anyway. I think Cell would allow this, as in the original timeline, he told Goku to take one, since it would be a more entertaining fight for him. When Goku takes it, he might have a small amount of power increase, but but it wouldn't be enough to matter. However, Goku has a plan he decides to try, even though it will come at a great risk for himself. He goes into his Master Super Saiyan state one last time. After a brief sparring match with Cell, he begins to charge one final Kamehameha. This Kamehameha ends up being like the greatest, most powerful Kamehameha that Master Roshi used in the Tournament of Power, as his technique uses his life force. While charging it, he would tell the others that this is the only way he could think of to save the Earth now, if for some reason Gohan can't in his next fight. He then tells Gohan to tell Chi-Chi that he's sorry, but he had to do this, as he then puts all his life force into the Kamehameha. Since Cell still hasn't figured out how to copy the instant transmission at this point, Goku makes use of it once more to teleport and blast Cell with his Kamehameha at point blank range. After he finishes firing it, he wouldn't know if the Kamehameha works, as he would collapse and fall to the ground, dead. Smoke would have been kicked up all around where Cell was, so even the heroes wouldn't know if he survived or not. However, when the smoke clears, it would be revealed that Cell has survived. He would be in a worse condition than when Goku first used the instant Kamehameha, but he isn't as bad off as he was when he self-destructed. He eventually regenerates, as he then turns his attention towards Gohan, telling him in a mocking way that it's his turn to fight him. Of course, this is the final match of the Cell games, and it is obviously between Gohan and Cell. Now, it's a given that Gohan would be angry with Cell about the death of his father. The real question is Gohan's anger enough to push him over the edge into going Super Saiyan 2? It could easily go either way, but I still think he would struggle with releasing his anger. It doesn't mean he doesn't fight Cell, he just doesn't go Super Saiyan from the start. Regardless, Cell would still be somewhat worn out, since Goku wasn't alive to give him the Senzu Bean. So, his fight with Gohan is harder for him, though it is also possible that his near-death experience brought him back a little stronger than usual, so it evens out slightly. Their fight generally goes the same way, minus the interruption of Android 16 grabbing Cell, of course, since he is already just ahead. The Cell might not make the Cell Juniors this time, since if his own father's death didn't make Gohan snap. He doesn't think tormenting his friends will make him snap, but since Android 16's head is still around, and it is near the heroes this time, he asks Krillin to throw his head over to Gohan. Once Krillin does and 16's head lands in the arena, he gives Gohan his usual speech about telling him how it's fine to fight for the right cause and that he should release his anger. Once Cell crushes Android 16's head, this is still the last straw for Gohan, as he transforms into a Super Saiyan 2. Their fight would go differently than usual, since Goku died in the fight against Cell. He would have his realization earlier on that being arrogant would just get more of them killed, so he goes all out against Cell from the start, with the intent to kill him. Android 18 would still be knocked out of Cell in their fight, so he reverts to his semi-perfect form. Since Gohan is being serious from the start, though, Cell doesn't get the chance to swell and self-destruct. Instead, Gohan uses his ultimate Kamehameha, vaporizing Cell completely with it. The post-Cell games generally goes the same, except for one major difference. Hercule is dead, and the whole fight between Gohan and Cell was aired on live TV. There isn't any way to misinterpret what happened. Gohan killed Cell. So, he is the one that becomes the world champion. Jimmy Firecracker would probably rope Gohan into doing an interview with him before Gohan could fly away. Regardless, once he leaves, they still go to the lookout to use the Dragon Balls. The wishes stay the same, and Goku still chooses to stay dead, since he realizes his fault enemies usually appear. Afterwards, the rest of the Cell Saga from there generally goes the same, though in some ways, this is the better ending to the Cell Saga. Goku sort of got to have a last goodbye with his best friend, Krillin, since they got to fight each other in the Cell games. Also, the accusations against Goku about his throwing Gohan in to fight Cell and to die isn't there, since Goku didn't cause that in this timeline. And, by extension of Gohan becoming the world champion, he indirectly gets to provide for his family better than Goku did by being a farmer. He'd make more money through things Hercule likely did, such as brand deals, being in advertisements, or simply just by winning fights in future tournaments. Chi-Chi might be reluctant to allow him to do this at first, but when seeing how much money it brings in, she allows him to on the condition that he keeps up on his studies. As for Hercule and how he's dealing with the fallout of the world knowing what happened to him, things would be bleak for him. Obviously, there's no amount of claiming it was all tricks that the now revived Hercule could use to cover up what really happened. They saw it on live TV plain as day. He couldn't do anything to Cell, and then the monster killed him. He would eventually be strapped for money, so he'd likely have to resort to doing odd jobs or getting a regular job, instead of being able to profit from his fame. Even his manager, Miss Pisa, likely doesn't work for him anymore. I could see her going and offering to be Gohan's manager instead, since he wouldn't know how to manage his fame and everything that comes along with it. Regardless, when the Buu Saga comes around, things generally stay the same, just with some minor changes. In Vidal's eyes, Gohan caused Hercule and her to be put into the rough state they are living in now, so Vidal doesn't hesitate to reveal Gohan's identity as the Great Saiyan Man, which he was using to try and hide from his fame to some extent. This also means that she doesn't end up blackmailing Gohan to train her how to fly. Gohan might find a relationship elsewhere, though, since in the original story, Erasa was shown to be flirty with Gohan. Without him getting close to Videl, he gets close to Erasa instead, so they get in a relationship eventually. Eventually in the tournament, Videl would be weaker than usual, so she wasn't trained by Gohan, so she would have an even harder time fighting Spopovich. Hercule would still be at the tournament to defend his title, but when 18 finds out he doesn't have the money to bribe her, she knocks him out of the ring, thus becoming the next world martial arts champion. Another change might be with the whole Majin Vegeta thing, since his defeat against Goku back during the Cell games would have added even more to his resentment against Goku. The only other change in the Buu saga is that without Hercule being there to befriend Majin Buu, the events leading to him becoming Super Buu never happened. Gohan at the time still would have been training with the Supreme Kai, so he still gets his ultimate form. He then returns to the Earth, finds Buu at his house, and easily kills him. After that, when the news spreads about Gohan defeating Buu, his popularity soars even higher. This allows his manager, Miss Pisa, to find even more opportunities for Gohan to make money to provide for his family. Also, after the Buu saga, we likely never see Hercule and Videl again, or hear anything about them. For the rest of the sagas, not much really changes. Since Erasa and Gohan get together in this timeline, they likely have a family together, too. I flipped a coin to decide the gender of their child, and it decided that Erasa and Gohan have a daughter. For their daughter's name, I followed the naming scheme of Erasa and the other students at Orange Star High School, which their names were puns of school supplies, so I named their child Pensy, as a pun of pencil. This doesn't change much in the long run. Erasa just takes Videl's place and Pensy takes Pan's place in the scenes that involved Videl and/or Pan. The last major change is that Gohan might go back to participate in the tournaments, starting with the 26th World Martial Arts Tournament. He only does this for two reasons. One, he gets to continue making money for his family and to fund his research as a scholar, and two, his manager Miss Pisa probably would have recommended him to do this, to keep him in the limelight, though she might also encourage him to reveal details about how he helped save the universe by fighting in the Tournament of Power. Of course, this would further bolster Gohan's fame and popularity, bringing in even more opportunities for him to make money and provide for his family. Speaking of the Tournament of Power, since Buu isn't around, before the Xeno exhibition match, Whis causes Bola to be born slightly earlier than normal, so that Vegeta will participate in the match. There would be some minor changes in sagas like the Moro saga since Buu, and by extension Oob, aren't present. Without Buu or Oob being present in the Moro saga, the Grand Supreme Kai can't help them, so Goku would have to defeat Moro on his own. He could do this by taking Beerus and Whis' advice of finishing off Moro when he had the chance. After the superhero movie, Miss Pisa likely gets Gohan to reveal to the public how he saved the world yet again. So, this will continue just to make him more popular and be seen as a hero of the Earth, thus allowing him to continue to make money and provide for his family. In the end of Z, since Oob isn't present, Goku ends up training his granddaughter, Pensy, instead. Also in this timeline, when Gohan eventually grows old and retires from fighting, Pensy takes up the mantle of being the world champion. She could easily be seen as the right person to do this, since she is the granddaughter of a world martial arts champion and the daughter of a world martial arts champion that became the savior of the world on multiple occasions.